user experience, but in our experience, just in doing speed, our belief is really kind of, we'll get to that. I still want to get to that within the first 90 days. I don't want to get to it, year 4. I want to get to it soon. Keep testing and learn new stuff. So here's a project that we worked on this late. I guess this is like late summer, early fall. It's called Hooligan. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with Haro. Anybody? Haro? Help a reporter out.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Help a Reporter Out. Okay. Help a Reporter Out is a really kind of cool service that you can subscribe to. And if you're doing like if you're working at any kind of, if you have a blog and you're trying to make money off it, or if you feel like you're an expert in the field, it basically farms inquiries from reporters who are looking for experts. And these are all these reporters, 100,000 reporters, and they're writing for the Wall Street Journal, you name it, any press agency out there, and they're looking for people to tell them, how to use Twitter or how to do X, Y, Z. They're looking for people to help them write an article. It's a great opportunity for any startup, for anybody who's working on any kind of PR angle to get some play on a major media outlet. The problem with Haro is that it came to you in the form of all these emails, big giant email list you get in your inbox. And it was like 5 emails a day, and they were like, you're like wading through all these email inquiries, and it was just a pain to manage. And I used it at work at LexNet. I've used it for Big Kitty Labs. It's a great way to just kind of keep your name out there and get work and that kind of stuff. But I hated using it. So we put together a Hooligan, which is basically, it scrapes all that data, puts it into a database. I can put in the tags for my interests and what I would possibly be an expert on. And it farms me up that data, tells me who the reporter is, does the social profile search on their social graph, goes off and finds out who they are, what magazine they represent. It gives me a lot more data that I wouldn't get from a Haro email list. And it just allows me to act on those opportunities faster. And this is one of the examples of a prototype that we put together recently. Okay, so some of the interrogation questions that you should ask for your idea and concept. Sort of like, what is it? Why do I need it? What does it do? Who uses it? How does it make money? These are all your standard questions. Some of the big ones for us are like, why do I need it? Who uses it? How does it work? What's it rely on? And I'll get more to that. And where does the data come from? I think that's a huge one. Yeah, a lot of times, folks will get an idea and they just don't know where the data comes from to generate it. You either have to crowdsource it yourself, you have to parse it from some other site, you have to buy it from somebody. Those are all huge things when you're building something. And lastly, one was like, what are the barriers or black boxes or questions that you have no freaking answer for? Those are really good. Write them down. Don't ignore them this weekend. Don't think, oh, we'll figure that out later. Put them down on the list, and those are your key questions that they're going to haunt you later on if you don't find the answer for them. Okay. So doing your homework, this is really about doing the research. So for Hooligan, who uses it? Haro. Well, I did. That was great. That answer supports this first big notion, which is passionate about fixing the shit you care about. That's really important. If you fix something that you intimately want to fix, it's huge. What's the problem? Well, it's a spam problem. Haro's, it's hard to get clarity on what opportunities are applicable to me. That's great. You're identifying a real problem. Okay, cool. And then the question is that just your voice, or do you have any other data to support that? I mean, it's good if you can get more data. Well, I data mine user forums, Twitter search, Facebook, and Get Satisfaction. That was my gold mine on this project. Get Satisfaction had probably 1,000 people on there, Haro users, who were bitching and complaining about the product or service. And I just data mined that. I looked for I just kind of data mined it and tried to find a pattern for what people really wanted. And then I built a solution around that. It was great. And also the net benefit of that is I collected all that data. I created a needs, wants pool of understanding about what the problem was, what did people want. I created a user persona of what a typical Haro user was. And then I identified initial beta testers right out of Get Satisfaction. It's a huge win. Okay? That's all very good stuff. Next. Technology dive. We kind of started off with all right, what do we have to start with? A lot of you guys are doing that today. You're like, okay, I have a very big idea. What do we need? What's our first thing? Well, with Haro, or Hooligan, we had an email list. Okay? And then we had this attack plan. The attack plan, I like to challenge coders. I like to challenge coders. So I always like to tell coders like the mission. So we were able to tell the coder we need a data scrape on a stream and put it into a living database. We don't talk in like code per se. We just like to blurt out the challenge. And I think that's really powerful, especially when you start building stuff with other programmers later on and you talk. Coders and developers, they want to feel challenged. They don't want to do the mundane shit that they've done in their day job. They want Mission Impossible. At least in my experience, they want Mission Impossible. Those are the projects that make them go. So don't like dictate to them what to make. Tell them the story of what you need to achieve and allow them to really tap in and make the adventure out of it. Then you need the MVP feature set, which is minimum value product. We just needed to do a searchable database. We wanted to match on user profile queues, tags basically, and we wanted to create custom opportunity reminders through SMS and lists. Real basic, that's the constraint. Apply constraint. You guys all have to do that this weekend. I heard some of the folks talking in the check-in update about, well, I can do this, and we can do this feature, and we can do this feature, and this feature. Bad. Apply some constraint. Show me one really awesome executed vision of what you're going to do and why you're special. Don't solve the whole world. One day. And then, if you can do add sauce, which is these bonus wins that we did in Hooligan, where we segmented the data. We took this idea of, okay, I can pull the reporter who put this request in, but now I'm going to do a social graph profile on this person and tell all this information about who that reporter is to you, the person who's interested about writing for that reporter, so that you can get more information about who you're writing for, who's your audience. And then we had social sharing, you had Twitter and Facebook in there, which is kind of a nice, how does this thing keep going outside? Are you buying ads to get it out there? What are you doing? And then we added some decent UX. So Hooligan was concepted, researched, and mocks. It was about 4 days. Build to get to iteration 3, which I consider a happy place where I feel like it was pretty decent. 12 days. Initial user feedback with the beta testers that I profiled and found on Get Satisfaction. Positive. Fatal flaw, I didn't ask the question of what's it rely on. I basically violated the terms of service on their website. Joe! Crap! I did everything, I built this really great service, but I didn't ask this question about what's it rely on. I sort of violated the terms of service on scraping their data feed. Sorry. So now I'm at the point where I have a really great solution. I got users that really love it, and now I got to go convince the people, the hardware users, the providers of the data, that they need me. That's a harder sell now. But it was still fun to do. Well, that's a challenge. So Hooligan is kind of an example of you did everything, but you didn't think about all the questions you really needed to ask. And so some of you may be running into that, I don't know, but I feel like there could be some of that happening. Okay, so the last slide here is basically experiments matter. I've been reading a lot of stuff about Mark Zuckerberg, of course he's like the guy for 2010 at Social Network and all these books and everything. But one of the big things that I found early on in reading about him is that Mark Zuckerberg had a knack for running multiple projects in parallel for the hell of it. Facebook was one of 4 or more projects he juggled until it stuck out and took his passion by storm. So, he did Code Mash, he did the Face Mash, he did this Course Mash, he did Wirehog, he worked on like 5 different things. And then he also had the Facebook, right? A lot of people look at Facebook and they think, he did that and then he got like 50 billion for it. No, there was a whole story and process of how it got there. But I think one of the big keys is that he kept juggling and trying new stuff. And that's what I really want you guys to do. So if you do fail this weekend, don't let your failures end this weekend. Keep failing. Just fail faster. And basically keep making. That's it. Questions? Anyone?